Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about coming back from heartbreak and pivoting, understanding our limiting beliefs and changing them, and setting intentions and taking action in line with our intentions. Before we get into that, Sammy, what's been filling you up this week?
Oh, Nath.
What?
Another lockdown week done.
Yeah, survived it.
Yeah, but you and your introvert tendencies are like thriving through this.
Oh, a little bit. Yeah. Hasn't been too bad. I think I was actually kind of reflecting on this yesterday or the day before or something, and I think one of the things that has kind of helped me through this is that I do have a new role at work and a new team, and so I've gone from a team of two where it was just like me and one other person chatting to each other, and now I've got this whole big team of all these other people that I can chat to, and lots more like engagement in my day-to-day activities, even though I am stuck at home.
Yeah. This is crazy. I think we're in week seven?
Maybe?
Lockdown week 7 from New South Wales, August 2021. I'm tired.
You're tired? Yeah.
Yeah. I know that there would have been something fuely uppy last week, something that added fuel, something that made me feel good. And it's probably the very simple thing that I got outside and moved my body every day last week.
Yeah, you had a perfect week on your Apple Watch.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it.
Yeah, perfect week on my Apple Watch. Closed all 3 rings every day for 7 days.
Yeah. Fuel in the exercise tank.
Fuel in the exercise and self-tank.
Yeah.
But one of the great byproducts of that too is that I do a lot of audiobook listening when I'm walking. So that was, it was nice to get stuck into a few books and a couple of podcasts as well. So that my fuel up was making conscious time and energy for me and moving my body last week.
Yeah. And I think that movement last week has definitely reflected in our dog. He is like, he's injured himself.
He's so done.
He's so done. He's
so sick of the walk.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing is too, we've been going out separately. Like you've been walking first thing in the morning normally, and then I've gone out some other time during the day, and he's had enough.
He's knackered. What about you, Nath? What fueled you up this past week?
Getting out for a bike ride on Sunday on my brand new bike.
That was really nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Just for a little cruise along the Cooks River. Had a bit of outside sunshine and water as well. There's not too many like bodies of water around us, but it was nice to kind of go for a bit of a cruise and see something different.
Yeah.
But now let's get into this week's ep.
Today we've got Jeff Krahl joining us. Jeff is an international business consultant, corporate strategist, best-selling author, and certified high-performance coach. He's got 25,000 hours under his belt of empowering clients in breaking through their limiting beliefs so that they can live their ideal life. He authored the best-selling book, The Fifth Power for Relationships, 5 Key Secrets to Finding Your Soulmate. His purpose in life, through integrity, fun, and happiness, he empowers others to live an extraordinary life beyond their beliefs so that they can live a life of endless possibilities. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
No
So
worries.
cool to have you here. Hey, tell us a little bit about how you came to author that book.
How I came about my book?
Yeah.
Well, just like any story began, I was in an amazing relationship. And for me, what ended up happening is one day I came home and everything was different for me. I mean, like I walked in, there's boxes everywhere. There were suitcases right at the door. And it literally just stopped in my track. And I looked up and it was my wife. And she said, I don't know how to say this, but I want a divorce and I'm leaving. And at that point, like my whole life was just shattered. It's like, it's kind of like a wrecking ball, like coming through and just shattering everything. All my dreams, all my visions of, having a family and having kids and leaving a legacy. And we're looking at houses to buy. There's all sorts of things that were there. And there was no warning signs whatsoever. And it just destroyed me. And for weeks, I literally lost my mind. I, stayed in the house for days, and to the point where I almost wanted to commit suicide. It just just destroyed me. And I worked my way out of that. And then I lost my job. I had a great career and I lost that. And then I just, everything started to go downhill to the point where I knew I just had to shift something, and at that point I lived in San Diego, and I decided, well, I should move to the beach, right? The grass is greener on the beach, and I'll start all over there, right? But as you know, the grass is never greener on the other side. It just seems that way, right? So I moved to the beach and just started life over, had fun and this and that. But I recognized for myself, I was just pretending that life was all good, right? When deep down inside, I noticed that I really just gave up on what I really wanted in life. And I was blinded from it, right? I call them 3 deadly invisible forces that stopped me. And all 3 of them just like completely held me back from recognizing anything. And then one day I was talking to my client, first off, I got into personal development because I thought there was something wrong with me. And I was like, I got to figure it out. Something's wrong with me, right? It has to be me. What happened? And what I learned on my journey after hundreds of thousands of dollars of doing courses and books and seminars and trainings and one-on-one coaching, all sorts of things, I realized there was nothing wrong with me. And that all there was I was in a relationship and I was no longer in a relationship. And there was nothing wrong with me about that. And so once I got that in place, everything just started to shift. I got a new career. I started coaching and consulting business owners all around the world and found my calling in coaching, basically. And that's kind of how I got my purpose. I mentioned that to you guys earlier, which is through integrity, fun, and happiness, that I empower myself and others to live an extraordinary life beyond our belief and live a life of endless possibilities. And I got to really take that on in life and really look at how could I fulfill on that. And I started coaching business clients. And then one day I was coaching a client in Australia, and he got on the call with me and he was just like, "Hey, Jeff." I was like, "How's it going?" He's like, "Good." And something seemed different. I was just like, "What's wrong?" And he just said, "I think I'm just going to quit and I'm going to sell my business. I'm going to move. It just is not working. I can't find clients. I can't this." He was just down and depressed. And it really reminded me when my wife at the time said, "I want a divorce." And it just everything was disappearing. And I was shocked because he never mentioned anything. It was just it was a shocker. So I said, no, you can do this. You said you wanted this and you're not going to give up on that. And I said, and then he says, "Oh, Jeff, well, what would you do? If you drop ship me in Australia, here's the 5 things I would do." And I went through these 5 steps with him. And at the end of the call, he was excited. He was motivated. He was alive again. He was just like, "I'm not selling my business. I'm going to make this happen. I'm getting into action." We got off the call and I looked in the mirror and I said to myself, "Wow, that was some good advice." Right? We probably all had those moments, right? Where you just give some good advice. And then I had that other epiphany. That other epiphany, right? Which is, I should probably do that myself. Right? And that's what happened for me. I just decided, I was like, what did I give up in my life? And that's when I really recognized I gave up this whole thing about having a family, finding the woman of my dreams, living that happy life the way I envisioned it, just like my parents had. And I was just like, man, that's what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
And so that day I got into action and I just followed those 5 steps. And it was funny because it was like 2 more days later, I was in this personal development course and they had this special, the topic, which was interesting, was what is it that you wanted that you either gave up or don't think is possible of having?
How very
Right?
serendipitous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it definitely was on purpose. I believe the universe always puts the right thing in front of you. And I was like sitting there going, oh my God, there it is again. And I was just like, I am definitely doing this. And so I turned to my buddy, Thomas, that was next to me in the class. And I was just like, I'm going to find the woman of my dreams. And I really took it to the next level because I told him, I was like, he's like, yeah, I've heard you say that and so on, but how's this different? I was like, no, this is different. I'm 100% in and committed. And I purchased 2 fully paid cruise tickets for me and the woman of my dreams.
Whoa.
Who she was. Because we're at this training and they're like, yeah, we're going to celebrate at the end of the year in this cruise in the Caribbean for 7 days. And you can go buy a ticket right now. And I'm like, dude, I'm buying 2 of them. One for me and one for her. And we're going to celebrate. And,
Wow.
I'm going to be sipping daiquiris on the deck of the cruise with this woman that I know is the woman I'm going to marry. And I just had this vision right there in that spot. And I went for it and I went to the back of the room and I paid for my ticket. And it was funny. She's like, so who's going with you? And I'm like, the woman of my dreams, man, I'm excited. I mean, at the end of the year, and this was like in March. So I'm like, 9 months, I got plenty of time. And then she's like, great, what's her name? And I'm like, don't know her name yet. I was like, but she'll be coming with me. And she's like, well, we need a name. You're leaving the country. You need a passport. And we need to notify the governments on both sides that this is who's going to be coming. I'm like, oh, by when? And she's like at the end of August. And I started doing the math and I'm like, oh my God, that's only like 160 days, And then that's when like all the negative thoughts started coming in my head. And all those things that showed up for me was like, this is stupid. What are you doing? You can't even afford this. This isn't a smart money thing. This isn't a smart thing to do. You could do something different. You don't have to, all these things. And I literally was just about to walk away and say, I'll come back. And I was like, no, I'm just doing this. I'm 100% committed. And I bought the tickets for both.
And I'll have a name for you in August.
And I'll have a name for you in August. And she's like, okay, but this is non-refundable. I was like, even if I don't have a name for you, I will pay for 2 and she will be on the cruise. I was like, I will find the woman of my dreams by that time. And she's just like, wow, that's so inspiring. And she left and I left and I got right into action with my 5 steps. And to make a long story short, I went on 43 dates in 120 days. And I didn't use any dating apps. I didn't use any dating services. I didn't speed date. I didn't do all the things that people were doing and teaching you to do. Because I believe that when the divorce rate worldwide is 50% chance, it's a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
Last I checked, when you look at the grading system, a 50% sucks.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there thinking like, well, I tried that way before and I know how that ended up. I was like, there's got to be a better way. And what I realized is that no one really had a process, a system. And coming from a background of business, I just kept thinking, if I just did the same 5 steps that I teach my clients to find ideal clients, to actually find the woman of my dreams, I was like, it would work just the same. Why wouldn't it? Right. And so I took more of a business or an entrepreneur point of view from that. And that's what really inspired me to do it. And then once I tell people all this story that I just shared with you, they would always tell me, Jeff, you should write a book about this. Jeff, you should write a book. Jeff, you should write. This is a good movie. This is, yeah, I heard so many different times. And again, I ignored these things, not recognizing it. And it was at that time where one of my buddies said, well, why are you resisting this? And I thought to myself, like, why am I being stingy and not sharing with people my method and my process? I call it the 5th power formula that works.
Wait, Jeff, does it work? Which date number was she? Did you find her? You got us hanging.
Yeah, she was number 43. And yes, I did take her on that cruise. And yes, I've got a beautiful picture of us.
Let's see it.
Sipping daiquiris on the deck of the cruise. Yeah.
You have to share it with us so we can pop it on the gram.
Yeah. And this is the one. She actually doesn't even like the picture. It's like, I wasn't prepared and the wind was blowing. But it's like, for me, it's just the representation of I can do anything that I want in my life by following my 5th power formula. And I know that it works because I've done it. I've helped others do it. Even faster. I've helped now others find their soulmate in 30, 60, 90, and 100 days, like way faster than me, which I thought 120 was incredible, let alone be able to do it faster.
Yeah.
And these are people that are still married after, 10 years now. I think my first client was over 10 years, over a decade now. That's found their soulmate.
So Jeff, what's her name?
Michelle.
Michelle. When did you tell Michelle that you knew she was coming on this cruise before she? When did you tell
Another
her?
good question, because and it's so true, because I didn't want her to know. I didn't want it to be about the cruise. Like, no one knew about the cruise, right? It was just me, my buddy Thomas, and a few others.
Women,
I did share with some people, but on the most part, I didn't want it to be about the cruise at all. And so for Michelle, we met in July, actually July 3rd. We just celebrated that. And then it was, so it literally was like a week before the deadline.
That you were like,
because I didn't want it to be about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to make sure, like, she was the one. Like, I didn't want it to be like I said, just something I accomplished and checked off my list. I really wanted to really make sure she was the one. And so when we were dating, I knew on the first date, I was like, she's the one. Right. And so we dated some more, and I just confirmed all that. But I felt like we're still young in the relationship to say, oh, yeah, let's go on a cruise. I already paid for it. We're going to the Caribbean, end of the year. We've only been dating about a month. Right?
Intense energy.
So
coming on fast.
So it was close to about, 50 days after we met to really ask her if that's something she would like to do. I kind of first started with, do you have a passport?
Was that question number one while you were dating?
He was like, why? And I'm like, well, I was thinking maybe we ought to go on a cruise or something. What do you think?
Wow.
And then I told her, I was like, I'd pay for everything. It's a personal development course, so I'll be in a course. You can just be relaxing some of it, and most of it I'll be, in all my free time, we'll hang out and do things. And she was just like, yeah, sure. So that all worked. And then I didn't tell her anything about this whole journey until probably, she found out a lot about it
during the cruise.
At the cruise. Because I would tell people this like all the time. So I was in this personal development course, and there's like 5 different events you go to. And each of those events were over the 1 year, all the way until the end of the year. And they're like 5 3-day events. And so I went to that, and I did a little different. I went to those 5 events twice. So one of them I would do in the local city, and then another one I'd do in some other city. So I went on all these trips all around telling people I'm looking for the woman of my dreams. Do you know who she is? And maybe you know her, and introduce me to her. And so everything was by what I call the 6 degrees of separation. and just, follow the path of just using community, right? The power of community. And when I did that, all those people I told on the journey from day one all the way to the end, they all went down to the same end of the year event, and they were all there. So I had people from California and the UK and Florida and Canada and Boston. I mean, all over the United States and the world. They're all meeting for this final event, on this cruise.
And they're all rooting for you. Like, did
and
you
they were
bring
all
someone?
rooting for me. And so every time they met her, they're like, "Oh, you're the woman of his dreams."
I feel like you had some explaining to do.
I did have to explain, and then I told her that what I did and everything. But it was an interesting journey.
So, Jeff, give us some timeline. When was this? When was the big cruise?
So the big cruise was so it was a year. We dated for about a year. So that would have been in 2006.
Okay, amazing. And you're happily married.
Yeah, we've been married for 15 years now. We have 4 kids. Planned that from the first date that we went on. We talked about what it is that we wanted and, and how that would look. And so me and my wife are very intentional when we say things and when we want things, and then we just eventually just make them happen. So,
So what are the things that you work with your clients? What do they come to you for?
A lot of them come to me with either a big business project or a life goal. Usually it's something that they really want in their life and they just haven't figured out how to break through the barriers that have been stopping them.
Yeah.
And they're really looking for a unique way to do that versus following the same pattern that all the other coaches do and so on.
So what are our limiting beliefs then? Like, why are there things that get in the way, and how do you kind of break through them?
Yeah. So my philosophy, and we know this just from psychology, this isn't even mine. It's just the basic psychology is that they know that beliefs create the thoughts that you say to yourself and to others. And those thoughts that you say to yourself and to others create the emotions and the feelings in your life, right? And then those beliefs, emotions, and feelings all create how you take the action in your life, right?
Yep.
And then those actions lead to some sort of result, right? And most of the time we spend, on the hamster wheel going through that over and over and over. And the thing that most people don't really get is they spend way too much time changing the actions. So like if you're looking in dating, right? It's like, oh, I got to use this dating app. Oh, that didn't work. So now I got to use that dating app. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, maybe I should try speed dating. Oh, that didn't work. So, maybe I should hire a professional and have them find me dates. And they go through all these different things, changing the action. But if you recall, it starts with the belief, right? So you can change the action all you want, but the likelihood is the result may not be what you want as fast as you want. So you got to start at the core, which is the belief. And so my philosophy is that, we work through the belief first. Like, what are those barriers that you're saying to yourself? What are you saying to other people? What emotions are showing up there? Why are those things coming into your life? How is those things manifesting inside the actions you've already tried? Right? Like, I don't know how many times it's like, Jeff, I've tried everything. And it's like, that's fantastic. That means you know how to do everything. Now we just got to change the belief. You can go back and do everything again and get an entirely different result. Right? So that's really where I like to start. I call that my 5th power secret, which is a combination of your beliefs and your mindset and your intentions that you set, and then really having the correct habits to develop around that so that becomes the core of everything that you do. And so it'll make a difference in your relationships. It makes a difference in your career. It makes a difference in your health, wherever it is. if you set those three things up in the beginning correctly and you become natural at those, then it's easier for you to deal with anything that shows up in front of you.
Yeah.
So how do we acknowledge or start to observe those beliefs? Like if we're in a pattern where we've like, oh, I really been trying this. And now you're like, oh, maybe it's the belief that's underneath all of this. How do you start to figure that out?
Yeah, usually it isn't the belief that's in front of you. It's the one that's behind it, right? There's a couple different ways. I mean, obviously, you can read personal development books. You can go to seminars like I did and all sorts of things. I found the best way is just to interview the people that are around them and really ask them, like, for a really candid, straightforward opinion of what those beliefs might be there for me, and to listen to them and to write them down. And I teach some of my clients to just record it, right? Like do a Zoom like this and record it and just have that, like have them be truthful and don't be mad at them. You know, you're arrogant or you're a jerk or you're this sometimes. And it's like, oh, thank you for telling me that. What else? You want to know those things because you may not see it. Right. And the likelihood is you aren't seeing any of that. Right. And then you got to look back at like, where did that come from? Right. Like, when did that belief system start for you? Because most of the time it started when you were young. I mean, when we're young, our brain isn't developed and it has all these neurons that want to connect to parts in your brain, the synapses and so on. And what ends up happening is it's looking for how to survive all over. Well, how do you survive this? Oh, well, my mom did it this way. Oh, how do you survive that? Oh, my dad did it this way. How do you survive that? Oh, I saw my brother do it this way. I saw my friend do it this way. And you start to collect all this data in your brain. And then your brain thinks that's the best way to survive, which might be true at 5, 6, 7, 10, right? But when you're an adult, you should be able to connect those on your own versus letting them run unconsciously behind the scenes, right? And I think that's the big thing that ends up happening when people come to me. They're not aware of what habits, what intentions, what beliefs they're unconsciously on autopilot implementing in their life, right?
Yeah.
And so when they can discover that, and then we can talk about shifting that, everything moves. That's when kind of they start moving faster towards their goals.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. You mentioned about the beliefs kind of driving that self-talk and the way that we're talking to ourselves. So how do our beliefs impact the relationship with ourselves?
I think it impacts everything, right? If you believe like, I'm not good enough for this, how are you going to get the results, right? I mean, just think about it. It's like trying to shoot a basketball and saying, I can't make this. I can't make this. I can't make this. I can't make this. You may make 1 out of 100, right? Because you're completely manifesting that in your life. And we know from studies out there that literally our brain is a goal-making machine. So what you tell it can produce it, right? Like when I bought those tickets and I said, I'm going to be sipping daiquiris at the deck of the cruise with the woman I'm going to marry, my brain became a goal-making machine to make that happen, right? And there was a study done in Harvard. I mean, they've done this like tons of different studies, like even on Olympic athletes, right? Where they put, sensors all over their brains and they can monitor it and they say, okay, now I want you to imagine winning the gold medal, right? Imagine yourself doing the race. Imagine yourself this. And the brain is like firing up in the exact same spots that if they were doing it or not doing it. It really doesn't know the difference between the physical world and the make-believe world. But it's a goal-making machine. So if you constantly program it as winning in what it is that you really want, and you do that in the right steps, then you'll be able to literally control that. And that's really what I teach a lot of. And there's another Harvard study that was done in 2007 where they took a whole bunch of piano players and they brought them in. They said, play your favorite music, and they, wired them all up, and they could see it firing up everywhere in their brains of this euphoria type look, right? And then they had them come back a week later, and they said, okay, now I want you to do the same thing, but this time just close your eyes and play it in your head and don't touch the piano, right? They just played all their favorite music in their head.
Yeah.
And it was like almost an identical match.
That's amazing.
Like, and so when you know that, we know the evidence is there, right? We know that the brain can't tell the difference. So if you put those positive, powerful, what I call fifth power beliefs in place, then those things are just going to drive you to the goal that you really want.
Yeah. I've heard of this other study with basketball players where they took two groups of players and they gave one of these groups of players actual basketballs and hoops to practice with. And so they were practicing away and they gave the other team nothing. So what they just had to do was imagine that they were getting goals all the time. Like every single shot that they were putting up was just landing.
Swoop.
Yeah. It was a swish. Yeah. So then they went and tested these players like a couple of days time or something. And the people who had no basketballs were the ones that performed better. Like once they actually had a basketball in their hands.
Yeah. It's a belief thing, right?
Yeah.
And you can reprogram it. That's the thing that people don't understand is you have the ability to reprogram it. But if you're on automatic pilot, how are you going to reprogram it? Right? So the key is just to recognize, hey, this is what I want. This is where, if I'm not getting the results, then there must be a belief in the way. What is that? Right? And what am I saying to myself? What am I saying to others? How am I showing up? Who am I being in the moment? And all those things you need to look at before you start to try something different, before you try to do some sort of action. If that isn't set properly, you're really rolling the dice with your automatic pilot brain to see if it's going to work or not.
So, Jeff, how does this show up in our relationships? How do our beliefs or limiting beliefs impact our relationships with the people that we love?
Just like any other way, right? I mean, like there's relationships that I had in my past that have created these stories in my head about women that I've been with, right? And now automatically, unconsciously, I look through that filter when I look at my beautiful wife and soulmate, right? Like I judge her and assess her from those same beliefs, right? And so if I don't reprogram that, then I'm going to constantly be doing that. And it's a big, big problem. I think that's, again, another major reason why the whole relationships don't work out in just year one. It's just a failure, or even 2, 5, 10 years, 20 years, and they break up. It gets to a tipping point where you're no longer going to accept what you agreed upon in the beginning, right? And you're done with it, and people just walk away, right? They don't actually really look at what is those belief systems, what is our goals, are we all in alignment with this or not? And if you did that in the beginning and you set the foundation right, then my belief is that you're set for the long run, right? If you want to build a skyscraper together, the foundation is solid. There's no cracks in the foundation, so it's going to survive, right? But I think most people don't. They build it as, I know lots of people in relationship where they get in a relationship because sometimes it's better than being alone, right? Or, well, the person isn't perfect, but I could live with this, this, and this. Well, the question is for how long?
Yeah.
Right? And usually they don't say those words out loud. They say it more internally and unconsciously, right? But they hold on to that. And then eventually they hit the tipping point where I can't live with that. It's like what you said you would on day one when you said I'd marry you, or when you said let's get together and start a relationship, right? Most of the time there's no like agreement that you're signing. I'm okay that you're a disorganized person and I am happy to be living with that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
right? And
That's not in the vows. That part's not in the vows.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like, was that there? I don't remember that, right? But the other person is going, well, he loves me because I'm not organized, right? I'm the unorganized person compared to my wife. But it's like, it's knowing that, right? Knowing what each other is committed to in the relationship and not having it as, well, I can fix that person and make them organized, or I can fix that person and change that, because that all builds that relationship where you end up arguing, you end up giving up, and then it gets into like resigned about relationships, around resigned about your own relationship. There's no fire there anymore like it was before. There's no excitement. And all those things start to get drained because of limiting beliefs from the past that you're now looking through, comparing your current person that you're with right there on the spot, that they're not that, right? And then now you're
while missing everything that they are.
exactly, right? Versus just being with who they are and being okay with who they are and really knowing that this is what I'm committed to. I'm committed to working through those things.
Yeah. So once we've identified some of those limiting beliefs, how do we actually create new ones that will serve us better? And like, is there a formula to kind of create?
There is. It's a lot longer conversation.
Maybe this is something that people need to grab your book.
You definitely want to grab my book or have a conversation with, but it's a lot deeper. But yeah, you want to program. You want to really identify what are those thoughts. You want to rewrite what those thoughts and emotions are. You really got to create intentions around that. You've got to show up as your best self, how you're being in life in those scenarios. You've got to really be intentional about all of that. And you have to develop a habit of doing that, and it seems like a lot of work, but once you do it once, just like anything else, it just becomes more and more a natural thing to do, right? It becomes the new automatic, so to speak.
Yeah,
amazing.
So, Jeff, I would love to know, what is it that yourself and Michelle do, or what are the practices that you've got to keep your relationship in a state where it's fueled up and you're dating forever?
Well, that's a challenge with 4 kids.
Yeah, I bet.
It was much easier when it was just the 2 of us and so on.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I think
go on a cruise.
Yeah, exactly. We need a vacation once we go on a vacation. So now the thing that we've been pretty good at, other than during this time of COVID and all that other stuff, but it was getting away. Like me and her would spend a week, do a vacation, just us, and really make it about us, talking about things and so on. And then having date nights. Like a lot of times we just have date nights at home, kids are going to bed early and we literally order food, relax, and just have conversations. I think that's an important factor. And then we also use the 5 languages of love. So it's one of my favorite books. Just really consciously look at like, what are some of the things I can do to feed her love language and vice versa, her for me. So I think those are the biggest things that are there. But I think that the biggest tip is get out and do something just you. Even if you have kids, like really make that a regular thing to do.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So, Jeff, this has been a really beautiful chat. Thank you so much for joining us. We've talked a lot about being the change and taking accountability for yourself and your own beliefs and deciding if they're serving you or if they're not, what you might like to do about changing them. But we also talk about being the change that we want to see in the world. So to say thank you for joining us today, we've provided a month's worth of early childhood education to a classroom in Kenya. This project's looked after by So They Can, and it's been made possible via our partnership with Buy One, Give One. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love education. I think it's a big, big thing that's missing is personal development and education, and especially at a young age. My kids are now getting that from a young age. And I even do an educational class for high school students and teaching them entrepreneurship before they kind of get into the regular routine of life.
Yeah, amazing.
amazing.
We back education because we know that it is one of the fastest ways that we can get people out of poverty, and the return on investment is tenfold, not just for the person, but for the community that person lives in too. So thank you.
So, Jeff, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do, how should they do that?
I would have them just go to, it's interesting. The best thing I can do right now is give people my time. And I think that's the best place to do is you can just schedule a time with me. If you have a big goal or something you've given up with me, I would say just schedule a time, and you can go to my website, which is www.hpxcall.com. And I opened up just some times to have people have conversations with me. And you can get my book on Amazon, but that would be the first place. I mean, that's the best way to start to deal with those beliefs because, like I said, there's a whole process to doing it. You can't just kind of wing it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
To close out, Jeff, what would be the absolute number one top tip, tweet length thing that you would recommend for couples to maybe watch or read or listen or do?
Definitely the 5 languages of love. I think that is a core thing to like integrate that into some sort of dialogue and some sort of regular accountability with it. Like, how am I doing? Like sometimes I'll go to my wife, how did I do this week? Did you feel a lot of this? You know, what the affirmation is her. So it'd be like, did you get a lot of that? You know, I leave little notes around the house. So I would say really do something around that and make that a habit in your life and in your relationships.
I really like the asking for feedback. Like, I've been trying to feed you this love language. How am I doing? I like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.